So, as promised, some Excel tutorial videos. We'll start off at the kind of the lower end, the basic stuff, introduction, and then as we go through kind of the mists of time, we'll hopefully get a bit more complicated. If there's anything you want to know specifically, or any tasks that you personally want to achieve with Excel, then just let me know and we can have a look at them. All right, cheers. Okay, so we are going to start off with a very basic kind of flick around some of the basic stuff about Excel. I'm going to assume that you know how to open up a blank spreadsheet. If you don't, not a problem, let me know. We can sort that out. So this is your blank spreadsheet. Because you're on the web, this is the web version, by the way, not the desktop version. If you're not viewing it in a browser and you don't have all this kind of gubbins written along the top of the screen in the URL here, then you are in the desktop version. There are differences between the desktop version and the web version. Everybody has access to the web version, so we'll work on the web version alone. There's other things you can do in the desktop version, but it's not really kind of relevant at the moment. So, you've got your blank sheet. It gets saved automatically, as I say, but what you want to do, obviously, is to give it a name that means something to you, like any other file. So for the sake of argument for this one, we will call this, by clicking on where it says book saved at the top here, we'll call this Excel test lesson 1. Now that will automatically save into your OneDrive, and it will save into your OneDrive where it says the location here. So Kevin Andrews document. If you want to change that, click on the little arrow next to it. This will bring up all your directories in your OneDrive. It's like saving a file onto your hard disk on your computer. That's exactly the same. I've got a directory here called Excel Lessons, and I'll just say move here. So that test lesson 1 is now saved in that Excel directory that I had in my OneDrive. Okay, makes sense. What I won't do is go into too much detail about the menu items at the moment for this particular tutorial. All I will say is that each of these squares is a cell, or is known as a cell, and each of these cells has a reference. So there is a horizontal reference along the top, a letter, and a numerical reference down the side, a number. So you think of it as a grid, and each reference, each point in the grid, each cell in the grid has its own reference. So that cell there, what I've clicked, is E5. You look here and it tells you which cell you're in, E5. That cell is H6. So if you think battleships, remember battleships, then it's exactly the same. So that's how you identify which cell you're in. Now those references we can use later to do other stuff, but I will just show you one thing that you might find quite useful if you are already working a little bit on spreadsheets, just something that might save you a bit of time that you didn't realise. If you can change the width of the column, by the way, just by getting the mouse in between 2 columns, it will change from a hand to a funny little double arrow with double lines. You can change the width of the column to whatever size you want, really. Same with row height, if you want to change the row height. Anyway, I digress. So, for example, if you want a list of months of the year, you're writing down a list of how much you've earned per month, whatever, how many sales you've got going through per month, whatever. If you were to start off in this cell and write January, or if you were to write it properly and put January like that, what you can do is, instead of writing February, March, April, May, all the way down like that, you select that cell and then you move your cursor to the bottom right hand corner of that cell where there's a little square. You'll see that it changes into a big cross. So if you move that cursor to the point where it changes into a big cross, click on your left mouse button and then drag down, it will fill in all those other months for you automatically, because it thinks that you're trying to do a list of consecutive months, which by and large you usually are. It's very rare that you'd write January, 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 time after time. So the same you could do with numbers, although it's slightly different, because if you put 1 into that cell, do the same thing, put the cursor over the bottom right, drag it down, it doesn't make a list of consecutive numbers, it does repeat the same number, because it's quite conceivable that you do want to put the same number all the way down. However, if you type 1 in that one, and then 2 in the one below, and select both those cells by selecting the top one, holding the left mouse button down, dragging down and selecting the bottom one, letting the mouse button go, and then putting the cursor over the bottom right so it turns into a cross and dragging it down, it will give you a sequential number sequence. So that potentially could save you quite a lot of time when you're doing all sorts of different types of lists. There's other ways of doing lists that we can come on to later, but that's just a kind of basic one to start with. So that's first steps. Save a file in the right directory, what cells are by their reference, and how to create a quick auto-filled list like that. Lesson 2 coming up.